Is medical coding hard? Short answer, maybe. I feel like nothing is really one size fits all, but let's talk about the things in medical coding that some people may find hard or more difficult. Hey, how are you? If you're new here, I am Victoria. I am a medical coder, auditor, educator, and content creator, and on my channel I provide tips, tricks, and tutorials to help you be successful in a medical coding career. If you haven't already, I would highly encourage you to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can get alerts when I post new episodes. And I post a lot of episodes, new content, multiple times a week. So to some people, math is not hard, and I'm not a math person. If you ask me to do like accounting in particular, I will ask you how much money I have to pay you in order for me not to have to do accounting. Some people are very proficient and they like doing accounting or knowing about tax laws, but I do not. I am not proficient in that area. I am fairly proficient in medical coding. Some people don't like to read a lot, and if you're someone who doesn't like to read a lot, that's something that's involved a lot in medical coding. So if you're not a big reader, then you might not like medical coding. But keep in mind that no job is ever 100% perfect. The ratio that I hear a lot is that 80% of the stuff that you do in your job, you should at least be comfortable with doing. And then maybe 20% of it, you're kind of like, I don't really like this aspect of it. And if the scale starts tipping too much, it's more than 20% stuff that you're not comfortable doing or don't like, that's when you know that that job is maybe not a good fit for you. So if you're watching some of my videos, absorbing some of my content where I'm talking about medical coding and what's involved in medical coding, and you don't like a third of what I'm saying, then maybe that means that medical coding will be something that will be more hard for you, and then maybe you won't like it as much. For example, when a lot of people get pitched the idea of becoming a medical coder, they talk about, oh, it's coding, you look up these diagnoses and these procedures in books and you just look up the code. So they have this kind of surface level view that medical coding is about code lookup, but it's actually a lot more than that. It involves programs, medical terms, medical insurance guidelines, federal guidelines, medications, a lot of different concepts within healthcare. And most employers want to hire certified coders, and in order to get certified, there's certain things you have to understand. You have to have a broad general knowledge of all of these different concepts, things like anatomy, things like different medical surgical procedures. You need to understand the difference between an otomy or an ectomy or an oscopy. So that might be something that people find hard because they're like, oh, I just thought I had to look up codes, but actually there's a lot of systems in place now that can assist with code lookup. So what a medical coding job entails now is a lot more detail oriented because of some of the processes that have been automated in programs where a provider can type in diabetes and it will help him select the appropriate diagnosis code through prompts, but maybe a coder is looking at that and verifying that everything was done correctly and that it matches what was in the documentation. And a lot of the work for medical coders is in electronic medical records, and you have to understand how to utilize these different programs, how to access information in them, and then all of the different computer programs, things like Word and Excel, and even things like how to log on to a secure network. Actually, if you're still beginning your medical coding journey and you want to get into a program that's going to prepare you for all that different stuff, that's going to give you MedTerm and diagnosis coding and procedural coding and prepare you for everything you need in order to have a successful career as a medical coder, I would highly, highly recommend onlinedegree.com. I work very closely with onlinedegree.com. They basically developed a quiz that is just for my viewers that asks the same kind of questions that I would ask. Where are you located? How much are you looking to spend? How soon do you want to be done? And they will help pair you up with the right medical billing and coding school for you and your schedule. And I especially love that they have the right size program. They're not going to try and give you all kinds of art or philosophy classes that you don't really need to become a medical coder. It is all of the correct curriculum that you need to be successful in a career in medical billing and coding. And you might get a discount or even some free bonuses, but only if you use my link here, go.onlinedegree.com/Contempo. I will also include it in the video description, but you have to use that link to get the special deals. Another thing that some people find hard with medical coding is that there's a lot of gray areas. Medical coding can be a little bit of an art and a science. If you think about something even like meteorology, all the different weathermen are out there looking at the exact same data but coming up with slightly different forecasts. Sometimes medical coding is kind of the same. We can have medical coders looking at the exact same report and coming up with a kind of different thought pattern of how it's going to play out. So you might have a difference of opinion than your boss does or even your coworkers, and there are gray areas where we just don't have definitive guidelines. So in order to be successful, you have to know how to really research, how to read between the lines, how to notice those little nuanced terms and develop internal best practices. Another thing that some people find difficult or hard about medical coding is that there's always changes. Every year there are hundreds of changes to the code sets, and there's constant changes coming in from different insurances. And I don't want to get too far down this trail, but oftentimes updates means more expenses. I actually talk about all of the costs associated with being a medical coder in this video here, so you can check that one out if you're interested in all the costs associated with those updates, with maintaining certification and tools that you may need as a medical coder. But yeah, at the time of recording, I am using a 2021 CPT book. This book can range anywhere from maybe $80 to $120, and this is just one of the many books that I use. January of 2022, there's going to be an updated book, so I'm going to be getting the updated version of this book and possibly an updated ebook as well. I like the paper and the ebook version. I mean, the good news there is a lot of employers do compensate. They'll either purchase books or they'll give you a program that has basically access to the same information called an encoder. And of course, as you're reading through different cases and picking out the codes, if you come across a familiar name, there are privacy regulations. You do have to be someone that is capable of keeping that information private. And it does take time. I've actually had people message me and say, hey, Victoria, can you recommend a medical coding program that will take me no more than a week? There are some out there, and there are people who have been very, very successful learning medical coding in a short period of time. But I think a lot of people take longer. I think 3 to 6 months is pretty common, usually more towards 6 months. If you go through a tech or business school, it's usually 9 months. If you want an associate's degree, then it's kind of the standard 2 years. Honestly, to have the longevity of medical coding, you really do want to take medterm and anatomy. Even pharmacology is helpful in a lot of types of medical coding, different specialties that you're working in. So if you have no healthcare experience and you need to learn medterm, then obviously it's going to take you longer. And if you're a slower learner or you're trying to self-study, that's going to take you even longer, because you're going to need to understand that terminology that you're reading in a procedural note or an office note that doctor wrote so that you can select the appropriate code. So there is kind of that step-by-step process that you follow in learning medical coding, and it's not as quick as a lot of people might think it is. So those are some of the common things people find hard about medical coding, that there's a lot more than just code lookup you have to look up. There's constant changes in federal regulations and guidelines. You have to learn medterm and all kinds of other concepts like insurances, so it does take a while. And then we just have those gray areas and some of the expenses associated with being a medical coder. So those are some of the concepts that people do find more hard about medical coding, that it's not just this code lookup. You have to understand some of the different types of insurance that are out there, the guidelines. You have to read a lot. There's gray areas. There's potentially associated expenses and lots of updates. But if you're someone who likes to read, you like piecing together puzzles, it'll be a great career for you. If you want to see a demonstration of what medical coding kind of looks like when you're actually looking at a report and coding it out, this is the video you want to check out. I will see you guys in the next video. And until then, just keep on coding on.